Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to cover the brand new graphics and NVIDIA settings for Season 3 after the brand new update that went through for Warzone. If you enjoyed the video or learned something new, please do me a favor, hit the like button. If you're brand new, want to find your way back for more Call of Duty content, just double check, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. First thing we'll run through is some basic graphical stuff. If you are on console, 99% of this stuff will not apply to you. Pretty much all you have is in general, you can change your colorblind settings and your brightness. That's pretty much all you can do, and change maybe your monitor or TV settings. Besides that, you're kind of limited. So this is primarily geared towards PC, where you have a lot more options. We'll get into that. So right now I have this display mode full screen that generally gives you a little bit more frames. Some people do full screen borderless if they want to go ahead and tab out Discord and stuff like that. I have a 2PC setup, so that's kind of how I've set it up. I have a 2070 Super, which is a decent graphics card, but nothing compared to the 30 series cards. So there are certain limitations to what I can do, especially with everything that I have is geared towards 1440p. Recording, the resolution of the game, everything, uploads, all of that is at 1440p, and you can see that as a setting in the video when you check it out online. Some people are more geared toward trying to get frames, so maybe they'll play at 1080p. Some people want just the most beautiful game resolution wise, so they can even play at 4K as long as that's matching their monitor. You know your individual settings. This is what I have for 1440p. Most will probably work for you. Some you'll kind of have to tweak here and there to match your individual computer power, as well as the resolution you want to play at and the frames you desire in game. So this is kind of how this part works. We'll go ahead and continue through. We'll speed through. NVIDIA highlights I have disabled. Some people have those on so it can record a quick clip in case you want to post that online. Hey, I hit the nastiest 500-meter shot. That's there. I'm usually recording when I'm doing anything, so I don't need that extra on there. I have the reflex low latency enabled plus boost. I have the gamma set to the default to the left. Streaming quality, normal. Texture resolution, have it a normal. This one is the biggest impact in terms of VRAM usage. If you want a little bit better frames, you can lower that, but then you do lose a lot of details, which for me, as a content creator, I want my game to look good. I'm not necessarily a competitive gamer per se, so I really care about how my game looks rather than trying to get an extra 10 or 12 frames by lowering that. Again, that comes down to preference. This texture filter I have to normal. Particle quality I have high. Bullet impact and spray enabled. Tessellation I have disabled. Map resolution in terms of shadows, I have that to normal. If you put it to low, it ends up making real blockiness. Like you can kind of see in the image behind me, how there's a lot less detail and it kind of clogs up stuff. I want my game, like I said, to look better. It doesn't have a huge impact until you get to the higher one. So I just leave that at normal. Cache shadows and cache sun shadows, I have those disabled. Particle lighting normal. DirectX ray tracing, it can give a little bit more immersion, but I don't like how dark it makes the game generally. And this one generally does tank your frames, so it's kind of one of those things that maybe you use when you play the campaign, but I wasn't use it for a multiplayer experience. Ambient occlusion, I have it up to the second one. And then this screen space reflection, I have that to low. In terms of the other stuff, there's two settings that are going to be different depending on, how you want to try it out, because there are some issues with it. Filmic strength, I have it set to 0. I have not had enough time with the DLSS. I know that I get like an extra 5 or 8 frames if I have it set to quality, which is recommended for 2K gaming. It does a lot of the work for you. So you could turn off depth of field, world blur off, motion blur off, film grain off. But if you decide to have DLSS off, they have this other version where maybe you put it to like the SMAA or anti-aliasing 1x or 2x, or even the filmic one. Those kind of help to like tighten it up so that there's no jagged edges. Normally, if you have anti-aliasing off, a shadow can have a jagged edge, edges of buildings, edges of walls, they kind of have a little jaggedness to them. The 1x and the 2x will help to straighten that out and make it a lot smoother. But some people like the extra frames, or they like things being jagged so they can actually spot things a little bit easier, a little harder to blend in. So it comes down to preference. And then you can actually go with the dynamic resolution off with the 144 frames if that's what your desired is, or 240, or whatever your desired frames is based off your setup. So if I end up going NVIDIA DLSS and go to quality, some games I didn't really notice it much in this one. I don't notice any difference by having it on or off, honestly, besides a couple frames here and there, but it could be depending on what part of your map on. It can make certain elements a little bit blurry that aren't in focus, and that is one of the downsides of DLSS in some games. So you kind of got to try it for yourself. generally you will get better frames on most setups at higher resolutions. So that's kind of how that works. Now let's go ahead and take a look at how everything looks in game. So we're flying into the map, and at first glance, I'm gonna say that by itself, without any filters on, the game looks significantly better than it did after the update, with one small exception. There's kind of like a gray haze or film. I think it has a lot to do with the actual nuke going off. It kind of creates a little bit of a film over it, so I hope it's intentional so they can remove it. But you can kind of see how it looks. We'll go ahead and glide around. So that is a huge upgrade graphically in terms of color, because before Verdansk was 50 shades of gray. There was no color in there. It was absence of color. So now when we actually use some NVIDIA filters, normally I press Alt-Z to open that up. You can do Alt-F3. You can go ahead and see kind of how it brightens it up a little bit, lightens it up, but also adds a little bit of color added onto the color. I didn't go overboard. So we'll go ahead and land, and then I'll show you some differences head to head. So I actually played with these settings quite a bit, and no matter what you do, you cannot eliminate the haze. And I think they modified how the interaction of colors works with shadows. Normally, I think it worked off a gray scale, but now they're using like blues and purples. So if you modify your colors, the shadows just look more blue. Your gun, instead of looking black, looks more blue. And that's just inherently with some of the changes they made. Will they be able to fix it? I hope so. I think the lighting dynamically changed. This is with them off. And we'll go ahead and look at with them on again, so you can kind of see that comparison. So there we go, on. Big difference in terms of visibility. Will it ever look like it did before? I think with NVIDIA filters, it made it look the hair better before. But I think that the overall general user experience of more players is actually better now because of the color changes they've made. Here's another one that I specifically changed my settings for, because if you do not have these off, you're at a disadvantage in this case. This is how it looks with them off. This is one of the darker areas of the map. I specifically went around searching for areas of the map that are pretty dark. You can see it's lit up. You can still see the visibility is good. It doesn't look like fake in any way. But this corner is specifically why I want to use filters, and I think it's an advantage. Unfortunately, this is one of the areas that they did not light up. They've added several lights to this map, and you can see that it's well lit up. But this area right here, just go ahead and look at it closely. You'll see it change up quite a bit here. And that is a night and day difference. So that is what I was going for. Could I get it a little bit lighter? Yes. But then you're going to end up with issues when you run out here. They've added also a dynamic lighting effect. Did you guys see that? It does like a transition. Like almost like your eyes get used to it. So this is with the filters on. And then when I go outside, you're going to see it gets bright and then it dims. So they have dynamic lighting. Watch. See how it changes? It does like a flicker and it changes. I didn't do anything. And we'll see it with and without the filter. So I'll do the same thing. I'm going to turn them off. So they do have a dynamic lighting effect, apparently, that I don't think it was there before. So I come out. See how it like gradually scales? So this is how it looks without any filters. Still looks pretty good. Like I'm saying, it does look pretty solid. And then we'll go over the filters here. So this is kind of what I have for the filters now. Still looks pretty good. But I think the changes still allow you to see indoors, in shadows, without negatively impacting this as much. Because I know with the previous settings, you had to like do some craziness with your brightness and saturation, which just made everything washed or the sun too bright. Like you couldn't look over here. Like I can look over there and there's no issues. Even though I'm looking directly at the sun, I can still see the horizon without any issues. So let's go ahead and go over the individual filters and why, how they work. So it's specifically for NVIDIA. So AMD, I'm sorry, there's not really anything for you, but you want to put them in this order. Does it matter 100%? No. Sometimes you can rearrange them, but the order generally matters a little bit. So if I go first one up is details. I have 36 sharpen, 49 clarity, 49 HDR toning. You could change these. Like I said, modify how that look. But this is kind of like how I would have it. Pretty much works for my setup. So that's details. I'll open them all so you can take probably a screenshot of them. And then I have the tint 0, color 0. So I'm modifying the game very little since it does look pretty good by default. Added a little bit of color. Some people that don't want that much, you can lower that. If you want more, you can raise it. It's a matter of preference. Like I said, I'll probably have mine right around 30. And then the brightness and contrast, I've only modified it slightly. The shadows, you can raise this, but you see how much it darkens stuff? It whitewashes the game a little bit, so I added a little bit of contrast, but you can remove that if you want. So I have that right at like 9. And then the highlights I have there, which you can kind of see how they impact the game. I think without highlights, it does look pretty good, but it looks a little too gray. So I kind of have them right around here. Not a huge difference. You can modify that to 0. But those are the settings currently, and you kind of see how they look for the colors, for the exposure, and for the brightness. So those are pretty much it. Hopefully you guys do find them helpful, and they do put out an update that will get rid of some of the haze that we do have on the screen and that color balance of blacks to blues, and we'll end up with a good scenario. Got kicked for inactivity. And hopefully we'll end up with a scenario where the game, it looks superior to what it did before. Obviously, like I said, without any filters, the game looks better 100% than it did before this update. With the filters, it doesn't look quite as good as it did before, but that's because of how the color balances just do not work together. Hopefully you did enjoy the video, learned something new. If you did, please do me a favor, hit the like button. If you're brand new, want to find your way back, double check, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. I do appreciate y'all supporting the content. Thank you for watching. As always, have a great day.